Welcome to the Women's Football Show here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Kerry Pollock, joined with Alison McConnell, and our special guest today is Hamilton Academical manager Robert Watson. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. First we'll get to the first win of the season last weekend against Dundee United. How important was that to get that under your belt?
Yeah, I think I had a feeling that the teams around about us would all lose, so I knew that going up to the game it was really important we won, and I think we completely dominated the game, and I think we thoroughly deserve to come away with the 3 points. And I think that's just really the promise we showed, particularly in November and December. We played particularly well in a number of games, finally coming together. And obviously we know there's a long way to go, but we're all delighted to get that first win.
What's the confidence like for the players now? You must see them a wee bit more.
It's a little bit of vindication in both what we've been doing as staff and what they've been doing as players, and the things that we're asking them to do. A lot of it came off at the weekend. Our big players had their big games when we needed them to. Our youth players are now got 6 months of experience in the league that they probably didn't have, and they're now more used to playing, particularly opponents around about us, the challenges that brings, because it's very different from what maybe a top six opponent would bring. But yeah, we're now just obviously we've got a big few games coming up. Obviously we had a loss in the cup yesterday, but we're following straight up in the league with Glasgow City, then a Lanarkshire derby on Sunday. So it's a pretty big week for us, but it's one that you've got to look forward to. That's why you play in the top league, to play these games. Do you
believe it can just take that one game to change the course of the season, perhaps?
I think momentum's everything. I think when you're on that kind of little cycle of losing games, it can be very, very difficult. But I've said to a number of people, in that run we've played 5 of the top 6, and within that we played Hibs twice. And prior to that, we played Montrose and Aberdeen, picked up points in both of them. Now we played another bottom 6 team and won. So actually, in terms of the teams we see ourselves against, we're actually doing pretty well at the moment. But that's sort of skewed a little bit if you don't really take into context the actual fixture run we've been on. And we've got to be honest with ourselves, the top 6 is a little bit far away for us at the moment, and our focus is going to be the bottom 6 teams.
Obviously a tough afternoon yesterday against Celtic. Elena Sadiku's first win in charge. How did you find Celtic compared to a Fran Alonso side?
They were interesting. I think Elena's been primarily a coach that plays 4-3-3, and they did revert back to a 3-5-2 yesterday, which caught us a little bit on the hop. But I think the players in my opinion, looked a little bit more comfortable. But for any new coach going in, it's going to take time for them to implement a new style. And I think people probably need to remember they've played 3 or 4 years under Fran as a 3-5-2 system and wanted to make changes quite quickly. So I think the players, they played a bit from memory yesterday and played well. They deserved their win. But it'll be interesting to see what Elena does going forward, trying to implement what she wants to do. And for coaches, that can be very, very difficult to do mid-season.
I've seen Celtic a couple of times in recent weeks. I saw them against Rangers and against Glasgow City, and my own observations were that I thought they looked a bit shell-shocked as a team, just at the manner of Fran's departure when it came about, and almost the suddenness of it. I think it just seemed to come out of the blue. So I don't know, I'd be interested to hear, a coach's perspective, did you sense anything different about them as a team?
I think, when you change any coach, there's usually 2 things. It can take a coach a little bit of time to get ideas over, especially if, in Elena's case, clearly she's got some very different ideas from what Fran has done. I think even just looking at that game, I was at the Rangers game in the Cup, and even for taking a Caitlin Hayes as an example, used to playing in a back 3 where she can really step into the game and come forward. It's a bit more difficult to do that in a back 4. So I think it just will take some of the players a bit of time to get used to things, and that's from just generally playing in a different system to, well, all of a sudden your passing angle's different. Going into midfield's a slightly different angle from being on the right of a 3 is to being in the right of a 2. You're now playing a right back rather than a right wing back. Celtic quite like under the 3, putting the ball into the striker, then playing round the corner on first time, which they did really well yesterday, but that wasn't really there in their 4-3-3 system. So it's going to take time for their players to sort of adapt to what Elena's going to want them to do. But I'm sure that with the quality they have, that they will get there at some point. And probably for Celtic fans, it's how quickly they can do it, with obviously the split just on the horizon.
Were you surprised at the timing of his exit, Fran Alonso?
When I'd last spoken to Fran, we played them not long before Christmas, and there wasn't any inclination, and I know a couple of people in at Celtic, but I think when an opportunity like a Houston Dash comes up, it is a very difficult one to turn down. I think he'd said previously he'd always wanted to go back and coach in America, and they are one of the bigger sides over there. So probably, you know, that may be where a level of surprises come from the players, but as we know in football, sometimes big opportunities come up and it can be difficult to turn them down.
Yeah, it's kind of life changing, I think, in terms of finances and remuneration packages that are on offer. I think it kind of would blow anything on offer in a Scottish sense out the window. I think it's inevitable for any coach that might be offered those terms that they would take it and go and further themselves.
I think with him winning, obviously he's Celtic's most successful coach. He's won more trophies than any other Celtic manager. They hadn't won anything for something like 10 years.
Yeah, 2010 they'd won the Scottish Cup.
One League Cup under their, or Scottish Cup under their belt until Fran took over. It took them to the last day of the season of almost winning a title. I think maybe for him he felt after that number of years and a couple of trophies, if he was going to step away, he's left a really good team and a team in a pretty solid position. And I think, you know, whoever you support, if someone's going to move on, especially a head coach, if they leave you in a good position, then as frustrating as it might be to lose them, at the same time they've not left you in a bit of a mess. It's not been a case of where, you know, they've ended up in the bottom six and they've had to sack him. He's left them in a really, really good place.
Let's just have a look at the rest of the results from the weekend in the Scottish Cup. It was Rangers 9, Dundee United 0, Hamilton 0, Celtic 6, Glasgow City 1, Hibernian 2 after penalties, and then it was East 5 0, Hearts 10, Montrose 5, Stirling Union 0, Spartans 2, Aberdeen 1, Partick Thistle 3, Queen's Park 1 and Livingston 3, Gartcairn 2. Alison, surprised by any of those results at all?
I think the biggest surprise might just be Hibs in Glasgow City. I didn't think there would be much between them. I thought it would be fairly close. I think Glasgow City will be gutted to go out at this stage, to not make it into the quarter-finals. And I think too, going out in penalties always leaves a bit of a hangover. I think leaves an aftertaste. I thought it was quite a poor game from what I saw. I didn't think there was much between them at all, but in terms of Celtic and Rangers, I think you would, with all due respect, I think you would have expected them to come through. For me, I've said it every week now, I think for the last couple of months, but for me, Rangers are head and shoulders above anything else in the league. I think Joe Potter's done a fantastic job, and I think they could be looking at a domestic treble this season. I think it looks very much on the cards.
Bobby, you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think that obviously Glasgow City Hibs is the one that probably sticks out. You know, it was probably the big tie of the round. I agree that having played Hibs a couple of weeks ago, that I don't think there was a huge amount between the teams. I think Glasgow City have a bit more depth. I think Hibs have a few injury problems, so they'll be delighted to, especially after that cup semi-final loss. I think they'll be delighted to manage to win on penalties. We have Glasgow City up next, so we'll see what their reaction is on Wednesday. But I think for Rangers, yeah, I think they are on the balance of things. I think Celtic have played very well against us and given us a lot of tactical problems, but I think over the piece and in terms of squad depth, I think Rangers have the best squad. And 8 points ahead of Glasgow City. I think they're 6 ahead of Celtic. I think it's going to take a monumental effort to draw. I just don't see where they're going to lose 2 games. I think they might lose a game or drop points, but I just don't see where they're going to lose 2 games and relinquish that lead at the moment.
Just when you're mentioning your next fixture is indeed against Glasgow City, is that unfortunate that you've come up against them after a defeat for them, or would you rather just get it out of the way, especially after you've played Celtic?
I think actually we were looking at it coming into the new year that we only had, in terms of league fixtures, we only had Hibs and Glasgow City to play, who were top 6. And then the last 3 games before the split, and then the split, it's all going to be bottom 6. So actually, for us, it isn't really a big issue. We need to play them at some point, but having now those 10 plus 3 games where actually it's teams that are around about you, you don't need to think about, do we play a back 5? We're going to be quite defensive, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So for us, actually, it just allows us to sort of prepare for those games. Glasgow City games, we've come close a couple of times over the years. We were beating them 1-0 for 80 odd minutes and lost the game 3-1. We just couldn't quite hold on a few years ago. So, you know, you always have a bit of hope, and I think with respect to Glasgow City, your best chance against them is at Petershill on the smaller pitch, where you can maybe defend the space a little bit better. Very, very difficult at Excelsior playing Celtic, or Broadwood with Rangers, or New Douglas Park when we get them, because the size of the pitch is hard to defend. So yeah, I mean, the players they've got a bit of confidence at the moment, and it's our last chance to really cause a major upset, so we'll be looking at it like that.
It's interesting to see actually how Glasgow City respond, because I think since just before Christmas they'd been building a bit of momentum. They'd been ahead of steam. I think they looked looked like a far more comfortable team just across the last 6 games or so than what they had at points earlier in the campaign. I thought there was a bit of a swagger about them again, so it'll be interesting to see just how they react to the defeat.
Yeah, I would agree. They've obviously bringing Fiona Brown back is a big signing. She's I know she's had her injury problems, but she's still an excellent player. You kind of thought they had maybe their blip had been over and they were just maybe going to roll on a little bit and just pick up win after win after win. I think 7 other players played 120 minutes yesterday, so I would expect some changes in their lineup for Wednesday. But they're bringing in quality at the end of the day that, with respect to our players, we don't have that depth, we don't have that international level players playing in foreign countries and all that, everything that brings. So it's a monumental task for us. But again, like I say, it's a chance for an upset, and if we did manage to do it, it would probably be the biggest win the club's ever had if we managed to do it.
Is it difficult to keep the element of maybe a fear factor away when you come up against a Glasgow City or a Celtic or Rangers, or are your players well and you know what, we can cause something here?
I don't think there is really a fear factor. That we're quite comfortable is maybe not the right word, but we understand where we are and almost where we are in the pecking order in the larger terms of where the league is. In Premier League 1 and Premier League 2, we are a bottom 6 team. We are a club that develops players. So I don't really see why we should be afraid of going to these places, because all the expectations on them, they must have a couple of them probably have 200 times what our budget is. So it's there's no point in being afraid in it, because it just is what it is. So
it's hard to imagine that though, particularly if we look at the men's game, Ali, with the differences and the finances as Robert's highlighted there.
It's like Real Madrid playing Partick Thistle, I think like when you look at the chasm and resources, it's huge, it's absolutely massive, and I think it's probably one of the challenges for the league as a whole, that we've spoken about it before, that almost you have 3 sections to this league, and it's maybe just about trying to find the finances that elevate the standard a bit more, that maybe just give a bit more of a level playing ground, which I think it can be so important then to have teams competing in a European arena, because then you have the trickle down effect of those economics. You have the money that's shared out a little bit that can make a big difference for clubs. But certainly I think when you look at the top half and the bottom half, it's utterly huge. It really is, and I know you could make the same. You could make the same claim about the men's game if you look at Livingston just now at the bottom of the top flight, and you look at Celtic and Rangers at the top half. Again, the difference is hugely significant.
I think you're right. I think the key difference, which maybe people don't really understand, and I get that, is the top 5 teams in the women's game, they all train full time, and although there's a chasm in the men's game in terms of finances, they're all still training full time. So today, Celtic will go into Celtic Park or wherever they're going and get their physiotherapy and their this, that, and the next time recovery. So I've got every single one of our players is at work today or at university today. I'm taking some time off from work to come in here with you guys, but I'm going straight back to work. So I need to now fit in my analysis, and then I need to hopefully fit in some physio sessions tomorrow, as well as train, as well as
plan
things, then fit in a game on Wednesday. So that's the difference. It's although we're in the top league, there's still a big difference in terms of that. It's infrastructure, and that's what funding can help with. It's not necessarily about making us full time. It's allowing us to create a better infrastructure to try and reduce the chasm in the league.
And I think that's why, when you look at Partick Thistle, I think that's why you're looking at what they've achieved so far this season, that final place, the top 6 place on the back of top 6 last season, and you think it is so remarkable because of the fact that they are also part-time and they have those same challenges. I think that just frames how unique a situation actually they've found themselves in, and just how big a job that Brian Graham's done.
Yeah, absolutely. How impressed have you been with him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a character on the sideline.
Everyone says that, Ali, doesn't
it? The very first time we met, I think we ended up in a shouting match after about 7 minutes. So, but Brian, he wears his heart on his sleeve from that point of view, and I don't really have a problem with that. Every coach is entitled to shout and cheer and defend their own team. But what they've done is they're very experienced. They've managed to recruit players that they've got a very strong spine, a very experienced spine, going from even Megan Cunningham, who's played all the way up to A-squad level, right the way through to even Rachel Donaldson, Lindsay Taylor, who's played abroad, and Amy Bullock in midfield, players like that. They've played around, they're in their late 20s, early 30s, they know how to go and win a game of football, and that's where they've been successful. They've managed to find a style of play that suits them, They can be quite direct at times. They can play. They can be quite direct when they need to be and just churn a result out. And that's where their success has been. They make very few mistakes, and that's what experience brings you. And yeah, it'll be very difficult for them in the cup final. But I'm sure I'm sure Brian will come up with some sort of plan to try and nullify Rangers' threats.
Absolutely. Well, let's have a look at the games coming up midweek then. We've got Aberdeen against Montrose, Rangers face Hearts, Spartans take on Thistle, Glasgow City will face Hamilton, and Motherwell will face Celtic. Ali, anyone you're looking forward to particularly on that list?
Yeah, I think Rangers Hearts might be interesting. I think Eva Olive, obviously she took points off of Celtic just before Fran Alonso's last game actually. She kept them to a draw, and I think it was fairly tight the last time Rangers were through. So I think that one could be notable. The fact that it's in Glasgow, it's not through in Edinburgh. I think you'd expect Rangers to win. I think Rangers will take some stopping, but that for me would be the game that would possibly just catch the eye.
Now, Lanarkshire Derby coming up for yourselves, Robert. Is there any added kind of element of the rivalry in there? Do you like when these games come around?
I personally like them. I liked them when I played. I like playing in local derbies and things like that. So I really look forward to them. I think for us, it's we didn't play well in the first Lanarkshire Derby of the season. I think we were still going through a bit of a transition with new players and all that entails, but I think we're in a much better place, a much more settled place. I think we hadn't really worked out what the best shape and things like that was for us. Got a couple of players hitting maybe a little bit of form and picking up goals at just the right time. I think Motherwell have gone through a bit of a tricky spell, in terms of results. Obviously a couple of players out, a couple of players in, so they'll be a little bit more difficult to predict than normal, but they've got undoubted quality in the team as well. They've got a lot of experience, they've got a lot of quality, particularly in midfield. It's going to be a very tough game, but again, if people are at a loose end on Sunday, I would urge them to come along. My frustration is none of these have been shown on television yet. Not a Lanarkshire Derby, and all of them have been pretty exciting. Whether it be own goals, red cards, comebacks. It generally tends to deliver, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all from us on the Women's Show this week. If you're not busy this weekend, get yourselves along to the Lanarkshire Derby. We'll be back next week with some more action to look forward to. See you then.